Hello and welcome to day 14 on our Holy Land trip. Today was our last day and we started at Ein Gedi, the oasis by the Dead Sea. We started off with a hike along a river path, and we heard from Dr. Luker. We thought at this time we'd let you hear a little bit about Dr. Luker as he shares about his career.
Dr. Luker, we'd like to know a little bit about your background. You've done a wonderful job with our tour group, and we'd like to know a little bit about your background and your history here in Israel.
I'm Dr. Bart Teal. I'm a Lutheran pastor, served a parish on Long Island, New York, and was the professor of Old Testament at California Lutheran College for 6 years before coming to Lutheran Theological Southern Seminary in 1988. And I've been professor of Hebrew Scriptures there at Lutheran Theological Southern Seminary in Columbia, South Carolina, since 1988. I'm also teaching associate in the Graduate Department of Religion at the University of South Carolina, and I'm adjunct professor of Bible for the Jerusalem Center for Biblical Studies, located in Jerusalem. I have been teaching these tours probably for about 20 years. I've been coming to Israel for about 30 years, which is kind of scary. Made my first trip as a graduate student in 1981. And I have enjoyed this group from Mount Horeb Lutheran Church in Chapin, South Carolina. They have just been a delight. We have a 2-week tour that even took us down close to the Sinai Desert and all the way up to the Golan Heights in the north.
We thank you very much, and we really appreciate your expertise, and we look forward to trips in the future, and we look forward to the final part of this trip. Thank you very much.
What a special trip this was to have Dr. Luker with us and lead us. He was to us certainly a rabbi along the way. So as we finished this waterfall trail, it was one of the water sources for the Ein Gedi oasis. Beautiful spot. Next, as we drove along north, we could see the Dead Sea alongside of us. As we've said before, it's 1,300 feet below sea level, and according to some sources, it's 42 miles long and 11 miles wide at the widest spot. That's a little bit about like the size of Lake Murray back home. Next stop was Qumran, which is where some of the caves that were found and some of the scripture fragments from the days, this was back in the 50s when they were found. There was a boy who threw a rock into a cave and heard some crashing. It was pottery that held the scripts and scrolls. One of the longest, I think, preserved scrolls is from Isaiah, and this is the spot where they found that, and there's a museum there. We could go inside and see how those were preserved. Next stop was Jericho. This is the oldest city in the world. We saw some of the ruins from a city that dates back even further, about 10,000 years. Of course, you can't go to Jericho or this part of the world without seeing a lot of camels. So we'll show you some colorful thoughts as we rode around on some of the camels that day. You know, camel, the Hebrew word for camel, it means to carry. Also, they say they live 40 to 50 years, and they've domesticated camels for about 4,000 years now, so this is a very indigenous animal to that part of the world. We had a great day. As you can see, there's Mayor Stan riding on one of those camels. Our next stop after the camel ride was at a church near Emmaus, and we were able to have a worship service there with Holy Communion and hear the story about the two disciples walking along the way, and Jesus meets them at Emmaus and how their hearts were burning, and they turned around and went back to share with the disciples. This is the chapel where we were able to have worship and hear that story and learn about what does that mean for us, that this trip for us has been a story now that's touched our hearts, and we want to go back and be a witness to the wonderful things that we have seen, to the faith that we have been given. Our next stop as we winded up towards the Mediterranean was at Jaffa. We could see we rolled in around sunset, and we saw some beautiful sunset along the Mediterranean Sea and some of the sites there in the city. We had a great evening meal, and it was kind of a celebration supper to conclude our time together on this trip, and we had a great time as we celebrated this event. This will conclude our final day here because we headed to the airport after this, and we headed back to the States. Thank you for joining us, and we wish you safe travel.